Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce to you Stefan Agamanolis. He is head of the Distance Lab, which brings together science, technology, design, and the arts. He has actually traveled a very long distance to be here today with us from Scotland, and he will be talking to you about technology, design, fast food, and slow communication.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mo. Can you all hear me okay? It's okay? Okay. Actually, I didn't travel very far today. I came just from Ohio yesterday because my parents are from Ohio. I was born and raised in Ohio. So I didn't really come that far, but I came from Scotland a couple days before that. I'm just going to start by giving you a quick personal introduction so you know who I am and where I'm coming from with all this stuff. I started out in Ohio, as I said. I went to Oberlin College. I was a computer science major there. I also studied philosophy and film a little bit there. After that, I went to the MIT Media Lab to do all my graduate work, master's and PhD. At the Media Lab, I was working on a lot of audio and video analysis, object-based media stuff, and applying that both to video editing systems and interpersonal communication systems. And I'm not going to really talk too much about that stuff today at all. After that, I went to Media Lab Europe, which was just starting up in Dublin. That was an MIT sort of Media Lab venture over in Dublin, which lasted about 4 or 5 years before the MIT had a sort of disagreement with the Irish government, and the whole thing collapsed and closed down, and everybody was out of a job, including myself. But luckily, I had these folks over in Scotland who had been sponsoring my work, and they were like, well, you know, we really like your work. Why don't you come over to Scotland and start a research lab and continue your stuff? So that's what I've been doing really for the last 2.5 years, is running this thing called Distance Lab, which is a little bit like the Media Lab. It's just a small version of the Media Lab. It's independent, totally independent, but it's operating in the northern part of Scotland. And actually, I want to turn the lights down a little bit. It's this one here, because I'm going to have a lot of visuals during this, and I want you to be able to see them. I don't want to put you to sleep, naturally, so if you fall asleep, I guess, look at the screen. So Distance Lab is all about bringing together technology, design, and arts to overcome the disadvantages of distance. We're doing a whole range of work in things like telehealth technologies, distance learning, lots of other crazy stuff that I'll show you later as well. And the lab was really formed because the Scottish government was interested in the fact that digital media is transforming economies and lifestyles in rural and remote areas of the world. But there really was kind of an overemphasis on research that was for urban areas, you know, and maybe that's because most universities are in towns or cities and there's not a lot going on. I mean, this is actually an interesting city or town that we're in here, where you're surrounded by a rural area. But anyway, the Scottish government felt there was really a lack of research attention to rural and remote areas, and that's one of the reasons why Distance Lab was formed. And they also felt that there was a problem with research models. There's a lot of focus in the UK on specific disciplines. There wasn't enough interdisciplinary research, but there's also not enough economic impact. The UK academic system doesn't have a very good record of, you know, spinning off their ideas into actual companies or businesses or just interaction with industry. So we were charged with coming up with a new model for research where we do both academic research, you know, trying to do publications and that kind of thing, but we're doing a lot of what you would call knowledge transfer, commercialization, and trying to do things that would create an economic impact in a region, like creating new spin-off companies and that kind of thing. So that's just a brief introduction to Distance Lab. And one of the things that we've been working on, really the chief thing that we've been working on over the years, is we're trying to figure out what the experience of communicating is going to be like in the future. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that from my perspective, and I'm going to kind of illustrate it selfishly using examples of projects from my own portfolio, but I'm sure there are many others that you could imagine. So I'm going to start out with something completely different here, which is this. This is actually, I think, the number 2 image result when you Google fast food. So, you know, this is your typical fast food meal. then I Googled fast food restaurant, and this was the first image that came up, which I thought was pretty funny because if she was actually going to eat all that food on that tray, she certainly wouldn't be looking like that. And I started to make a list of things that describe fast food, the sort of fast food experience. It's all about efficiency, getting the food to you as fast as possible, getting it down your throat as fast as possible. You can eat it anywhere, anytime. You can be walking down the street. You could be in your car. You could be, sitting in class, that kind of thing. It's a global experience. It's supposed to taste the same no matter where you are in the world. I mean, it doesn't in practice, but that's the way it's supposed to be. And just the way you sort of dine is also very impersonal. You often are alone. It's served to you in a very robotic way. So all these things are kind of, they sort of characterize fast food. But there's a different way to experience food, and some of you might be familiar with this thing called the slow food movement. Is anybody not familiar with the slow food movement? Anyway, it sort of refers to this notion of gourmet restaurant, or gourmet food, gourmet restaurant going, where you have a very different kind of experience. It's almost diametrically opposite from fast food, and it was a reaction to the fast food movement. So instead of efficiency, the quality of the food is emphasized. Instead of being an anywhere, anytime thing, in slow food you have a specific setting where you go to dine, and everything about that setting is controlled. And instead of being a global experience, usually it's very local. It's using local ingredients, it's using local recipes, very personal sort of recipes. And the dining experience is the same kind of way. It's not solitary necessarily, but usually when you go into one of these restaurants, everything about the environment is controlled so that you can have a very nice relationship with the people you're dining with and get to know them better. So it's more human. There's more intimacy that's possible there. So, I mean, a lot of you might find this concept pretty obvious, but I'm sure there are plenty of you that maybe sit on this side of the coin. In fact, maybe 95% of the people in this room are on this side. I don't know. But what I want to suggest to you is that the mobile phone is pretty much the same thing as fast food. And what I mean by that is that the same design mentality that led to fast food has led to the mobile phone. And if you think about it, that's really true, because the mobile phone, it's also an anywhere, anytime device. You could be walking down the street in your car. You could be talking in class on the phone. It's efficient. The quality may not be so great, but it's enough to get the job done. It's enough to get a message through to somebody else. It's a generic device. You use the same phone to talk to your lover as you do to talk to your lawyer. And you use it for any kind of conversation. So, it's just, and it's not just the mobile phone either. It's actually a lot of other sorts of very common communication modes like email and, Skype and instant messaging, that kind of thing. They're all kind of in the same way like fast food. And it doesn't really matter what kind of phone you have. It's pretty much the same for any phone. So I think really anyone in this room who's involved in, the building or thinking about the telecommunication infrastructure should really be upset about this, that we haven't figured out something more creative to do with all this amazing bandwidth and all this amazing processing power that we have around than this. And everyone should really think about that, I think. So anyway, if this is what fast communication is, then what I want to ask in this presentation is, what would be slow communication? What would that be like? So I'm going to try to show you a few examples of that, and I want this to be interactive. So if there's a burning question or something, just shout out, and I'll attempt to answer it. And what otherwise we'll have, I think, a lot of time at the end as well, because I don't think I'm going to talk for an hour. All right. So first sort of area to explore is this area of being distraction-free. Slow communication maybe should be just completely distraction-free. It shouldn't be like this mobile phone experience where your conversation can be distracted by any number of things, especially while you're driving or something like that, or listening or watching TV. So we used to have something like that. We used to have something that's a little more distraction-free. Now this, I work in the UK, so I'm kind of picking up images from the UK for this, but this is actually a very nice phone booth. They call it a phone box over there. And so this was the kind of thing that was designed in the past, and you would go inside there, and you would close the door, and you would have a kind of contextually neutral space in which to make your phone call. It was sort of separated from the rest of the world somewhat. But we hardly see this anymore. You don't really see these things anymore. And they're really disappearing, and if there are phone things, they're sort of just phones that are directly on a street or on a sort of plinth of some kind. And that's really surprising. So what we decided to do was push this concept of the telephone box to a further extreme, and I'll show you what we've come up with here. I'll play this video and then I'll narrate a little bit after that.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I was just wondering is everything cool on your end? It feels really weird to be in this.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I'm glad that we decided to meet up.
Yeah,
It's been a long time.
So what are you getting up to these days?
Well, I'm living with a Spanish guy now
Really? Whereabouts?
in north of Smithfield.
How long have you been there?
Like
Sound down a bit and narrate
about
the
8
rest of
months
this.
now.
This is a project that we
Nothing's changed
created.
since
It's
you left.
called the isophone.
I think for him, things haven't changed
It's
terribly.
basically
He
a
got really quickly
telephone
into the
combined with a
kind of
flotation.
settling down.
So what you do in this
but
is
not
you wear a
just kind of
helmet
settling down.
that
Things
blocks
were
out your vision,
settling down.
and it also keeps you
He actually went ahead and bought a house in Arizona.
floating in water that's
Oh, wow.
the same temperature
Bottle
as
of
your body,
typical
so your
American
sense of touch goes
amenities
away
to
when that
make you-
happens. You can't taste or you can't smell anything either. So really,
how's that going?
the
It's,
only thing that you have in your world
like
in that
being
time is the voice of another person.
an old married couple.
Same thing somewhere else. So it's a complete
Never see
sensory
each other.
deprivation.
Yeah, we never see each other. We live our own
The
lives.
voice of another person in your world.
Sleep in separate beds.
So this is kind of what the system looked like in a close-up. It has these 3 bulbs to the side so that it kind of floated your head above water so that you could actually breathe and speak to the other person. And we actually took this to a pretty far extreme. We built tanks, special water tanks, that would hold water. They had a heater at the bottom so that we could heat the water to the exact temperature. And we thought, maybe that's your telephone booth of the future. You would take off your clothes, put on your swimming trunks, and climb up there, go inside. And you don't have to dial the phone. You sort of go in there. The moment you put on the mask and you sort of start floating, an operator comes on the line and helps you make the phone call that you want. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we actually took this to a further extreme. Sorry, it's coming up here. This is a fully underwater one. Like in the earlier one, your head was above water, and we didn't like that because we just wanted you to be completely underwater. So in this version, you're actually completely underwater, and you're wearing underwater headphones that have very good audio quality, and you're wearing a mask around your face like this. It's the same sort of thing that Navy SEALs use that has a microphone inside, and you can speak and do all of that. And that might seem kind of, extreme to you. But I think the most important thing to point out about this is that we really learned a lot from pushing that concept to an extreme. We learned a lot because we wanted to, I guess, learn about how the form of a communication device would be affecting the kind of communication that happens on that device. And people did have very different kinds of conversations using the isophone. And for one thing, people lost track of time when they used it. We had people who would go in and they would use it just for 5 minutes, and they felt like they were in for half an hour. And we had people who would go in and use it for 45 minutes and felt like it was only 5 minutes. It was very strange how people lost track of time. People also gestured more. I mean, normally if you're like using a phone like this, you might gesture with your other hand at the very most. But when you're in here and you have all of your limbs free, people were gesturing with their hands and their feet and just kicking themselves all around the pool there. And then the other thing that was quite interesting, there were no conversation anchors. Like there was nothing that you could hold in front of you, like notes or doodles or things like that, that would sort of anchor you to a particular conversation. So we found that people were going on stream of consciousness tracks more often. And when people came out, they sort of felt like maybe that was good for creativity. So this could be a good thing that if you wanted to have like a phone conference with a few other people, it could be a good way of generating new ideas that maybe you wouldn't have reached before because you were anchored to certain things that and didn't let your mind wander as much. So lots of interesting ideas coming from that. And I think that that's what that's suggesting, I guess, is that the form of the communication device can affect the tone and maybe even the outcome of the conversation. So you could create a phone that makes you more creative, perhaps in this case, or maybe you could even create a phone that causes two people to fall in love or something. Or you could create a phone that causes a war. You know, just because of the way it's designed, it creates a sort of confrontation. So I'll just show you a couple more pictures of this. This was an installation that we did in Linz, in Austria, where we had this installed and we had a number of people trying it. And I'll just play this for the Japanese speakers.
リンツの町の中心ハウプト広場、そこに大きなタンクが2つ用意されました。中は水で満たされています。観客は息のついた特殊なマスクをかぶり、水の中に浮かんで作品を体験します。体験者はマスクについた電話で外の人と話すことができます。実はこれ、なんと未来の電話ボックスなのです。早速私も体験してみることにしました。タンクの水温は体温と同じ温度に調節されています。そしてマスクには電話とともに酸素ボンベがついています。マスクをつけると視界が完全に遮られ真っ暗闇となります。さらにヘッドホンをつけると周りの音が全く聞こえなくなります。音もなく光も当たらない真っ暗闇の中で温かい水に浮かんでいるとまるで母親の体内にいるような感覚に襲われます。こうした状態で電話をかける、なんとも不思議な体験です。
もしもし。
はい。
はい、中谷です。
中谷さんですか。
はいはい、どうもどうも。今ね、オーストリアのリンツなんですけど、大きな水槽があって、その水槽の中にですね、今私は浮遊している状態です。
水の中ですか。どんな気分ですか。
覚醒状態の中で会話している感じの。
I'm going to stop it there because it'll go on for a lot longer. But you get the idea anyway. I just wanted to play that video because I don't normally get a chance to do that because all my talks are very much shorter, I guess, than this. But it gives you a sense of the realism of that it actually worked and people used it to make phone calls. And in that exhibition, we let people come in and use it and make a free phone call anywhere in the world, so they didn't have to worry about paying for it or anything like that. A Japanese speaker might be able to say better than me. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to move on to some other things that we can talk more about that. But yeah, question. There would be obviously differences. I don't know what they would be. We didn't study that carefully enough. But that's why we built two tanks, is so that we could do more controlled studies between two people. And we had those obviously in the same location, so you could try the same thing between two people in the same location. But we didn't have another tank on the other side of the world. That would have been really cool. But what we did to try to do after this is actually talk to spas, like spa companies, because they normally have flotation tanks or other sorts of services like this, and that could be sort of an additional thing that they could add on for people who wanted to make a phone call in a totally relaxed kind of sensory deprivation environment. So we were getting to the point of maybe, making some kind of product out of that. But anyway, I'll leave it at that for the moment. Okay, well, let's look at another area of slow communication, intimacy, because it sort of feels like communication steals away our intimacy and our humanity normally, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And we've created another completely different project. So this is a communication device that is intended for a bedroom environment. It's meant to be used by couples who are in a long-distance relationship. The girl that you see in the video is nice guy. Again, this is kind of a reaction about the very personal, generic. Why should we use this device to talk to our partner? This interface is kind of like body drawing, inspired by the way it works is you're lying in bed and wear a special ring that can track by the put that around your body. And as you do that, lines are traced effectively on your body, and they're also transmitted to your about touch. We're using the gesture of touch, using the mic to That's a project that's called Mutsugoto. It was done by Tomoko Hayashi. And I think that's what, again, suggesting that we don't have to have communication systems that are generic, that are one size fits all. They can be tailored to the character of the relationship in some way. In this case, it's a romantic relationship between a sort of long-distance couple. But it shows that we can try to celebrate the intimacy in that kind of relationship, not kill it, like we do now in many kinds of communication devices. And just giving you a kind of different look at something completely different, but also kind of appeals to this notion of intimacy. If you go to Flickr now and you go to sort of a general page on Flickr, this is the kind of thing you get where you have an image and you have comments that people who you might not know about anything about them are just sort of writing random comments or nice picture and that kind of thing. And it's not really easy to get really into that photo inside your browser unless it's it's just sort of stuck on the screen. It's stuck in a certain type of venue that's very much a work venue because you're normally doing your work on your laptop. So we tried to create a kind of gourmet version of Flickr as part of one of the projects we did. This basically was a competition, a photo competition. And we had 800 photos submitted. And instead of just choose the one or two winners, we decided to put everything that was submitted into the competition or into the exhibition here. So we had 800 photos that were printed on cards there, and it sort of looked like this on the wall. And each photo had a little number and a little barcode. So you would be able to walk in there, and it felt like walking into a physical version of Flickr. And you could look at the photos, and there wasn't any information on the photos, so if you got interested in one, you could use a barcode reader and zap it. And what that did is brought it up, sort of projected on a very large screen on one side of the room, together with some information that person entered on their entry form. And then the most fun part about it was you could pick up a phone and just leave a message for the photographer. And that would get stuck on there so that the next time somebody selects the same image, that message would play back and you could add another message to it, so you could have a dialogue with other people who had seen that photo, just the same way that you would have on Flickr, this text dialogue, except that it was with voice. So it became much more personal and intimate because you could hear that person's voice and hear the intonations in their voice, and you might even recognize their voice and that kind of thing. So this is just another example of how you could create a gourmet version of something that we all know very well. Well, that's an interesting question. We have been talking to a number of hotels, mainly art hotels in Europe, for example, in Berlin and Amsterdam, and they've expressed high interest in it. And it could be something that it could be just installed in a hotel room, and so if you're on a business trip or whatever, you could go there and connect with your partner who's in another location. Or it could be something like a long-distance date, where if you're already in a long-distance relationship between two major cities, then instead of going out to dinner in the same restaurant like you would normally do, you could sort of arrange a hotel room in both cities and have some kind of date, where you could be in that experience. Yeah. Yeah, we wanted to set up a number of studios in major cities that would sort of provide this service. And we actually tested it between London and Edinburgh, and we had a number of couples come in who were long-distance couples try it so that we could learn more about how we could actually offer that. So it's getting there. We're getting there to a commercial product, I think. Okay, so now let me go into another area here, and there's I think a total of 5 areas that I'm going to touch on, and then we can sort of go into sort of more general question-answer, I guess. So this area of personalization, I've said before how everything is one-size-fits-all pretty much right now. We use the same phones for any kind of relationship. We also see the sort of same Skype screen to track awareness of any kind of person that might be in our network, whether they're online or offline or busy or something like that. So shouldn't that kind of a system be more personalized to the type of relationship too? Because now I've got work colleagues here sitting right next to good friends and possible girlfriends and things like that. So this is one experiment in that kind of direction. This guy didn't like that kind of thing, and so what he created was a flower pot that had a flower that would sort of be like that. And then when his girlfriend logged into her computer at the university, the flower would bloom like that. And when she logged out, the flower would debloom. And he basically made it a flower, and he made it pink because his girlfriend loved pink flowers. That was his choice, and it was kind of a do-it-yourself thing. He created his own thing that represented her. And it had sort of a wireless system inside so that it could communicate with his mobile phone, so he could carry it with him anywhere he went. I mean, it wasn't easy, I guess, to carry, but he could do that if he wanted to. So that was really connected, I think, to this notion of do-it-yourself, DIY. And we got onto that track and worked on a number of other experiments. We did a lot of work in soft electronics that were sort of do-it-yourself ways that you could make things that were like potentiometers out of completely soft materials, or tilt sensors that were made out of completely soft materials, or connected to hard-edged electronics in innovative ways. And we made some other experiments like this. It's basically a tilt sensing bracelet. It's kind of a poor man's version of an accelerometer, I guess you could say, where it just moves around. See if I can put on a thing. What it has here is a conductive bead, so that as your wrist moves around, it'll touch one of these 6 electrodes, and then that will transmit supposedly a signal to your partner somewhere else and kind of light up one of 6 LEDs. So if your partner is somewhere else in the world, then they could look at their wrist and kind of see some activity there and know whether or not you're moving your hands around a lot, or if your hand is in one or another position. So just a different way. It's a do-it-yourself kind of way of creating a connection between 2 people. I think that's a nice experiment. It's a very simple experiment, but a nice experiment on this area of personalization. So another area, tradition is very important in slow food, sort of traditional recipes being used for making the food. Perhaps it should be important in slow communication as well. But really, that's not the way it is now, because we have a lot of technology that looks very new, very modern. It's often very hard-edged. It's kind of sport-focused, very male-focused, and maybe the people in this room would like that because there are mainly men in this room. But just to give you an example of something different you could do, we have a researcher who's been working on combining traditional textile techniques with high technology. So she's made LEDs and other sorts of electronic components that are integrated into very intricate fabrics and textiles that she's made. Her name is Elena Corchero. So in this case, she's made fashion accessories that have, let's see if I can get the arrow up here. These are all solar cells. These are all solar cells that are sort of integrated directly into this antique-looking fan. And they're all wired together into the circuit board on the end there, which is actually in the shape of one of the slats of the fan. And it's odd how you don't even think about a circuit board being non-rectangular. Like you could have circuit boards in any shape. Why don't we see that more often? But we don't really. And then there are some LEDs that are integrated in there as well. So the way that's meant to be used is you would take it out during the day. It gets charged up as a small battery at the bottom, and then you can bring it in at night and sort of put it on your mantelpiece or something like that, and it will make an ambient light display, just give a little bit of extra light in the room. And she's made other sorts of accessories like that, like a necklace. This is sort of a hairpin. And this one's my favorite. It's kind of like a parasol. So you take that out and charge it up during the day, bring it home and hang it upside down, and it becomes a chandelier, which has a little bit of ambient light that it gives off. So that's just an example of how technology doesn't have to be so hard-edged. It can reflect our humanity, it can reflect our traditions more than it does now, and maybe make it more exciting to a different clientele than we have now. And if you're interested in that sort of stuff, she's started a company called Lost Values. You can Google it and find those sort of products for sale right now. So another area, this is the second to last one, I think. Fast food is often, as I said before, a kind of solitary experience. You get your food in a very solitary way or a robotic way. You're not really meant to necessarily share the experience with anybody else. You can do it yourself. But slow food is all about experiencing the moment together with other people who you care about and you want to build a relationship with. So I'll just show you a couple examples of how sharing can be reflected in the way we create communication devices. And just as a start, one of the projects that we're working on in my lab right now is a rehabilitation over a distance project, where we have, in the northern part of Scotland, there's a lot of distance involved and very sort of sparse population spread over a very large land area. And you have generally older people there as well. And there are a lot of people who've had chronic conditions or strokes or heart attacks that really would benefit from joining a rehabilitation class that you would normally go to like a health clinic, and you would do it together with a number of other people. And there's something nice about going there and doing it with other people. There's a motivational effect of being with other people doing the same thing. But often they live too far away from those places to really go to those classes, so they're handed a DVD by their doctor and say, do this at home. And none of them do it because the motivation's not there. Who wants to do that kind of thing alone, just kind of standing in front of their TV looking stupid? So what we're trying to do is basically create using video conferencing, create this rehabilitation course that you could take over a distance with a therapist that would be in another location that can sort of track how you're all doing, and it can also take things like your pulse oximetry and other things like that to sort of allow the therapist to track how you're doing. But the most important factor is that you're doing it together with other people. And you can feel that, you can see that on your own TV screen at home while you're doing that. Now, I'm not saying that that's the best example of this notion of shared experience, but that's certainly what this is getting at, is creating a system where you can feel like you're sharing an experience with other people. But there is a problem with that kind of grid, kind of like Brady Bunch effect screen that you saw. This is what a lot of video conferencing looks like. I think this example on the right is probably the one that had the most screens that I could find. And that's sort of strange, because if you're separated from someone by a window pane, then it's kind of like sitting on the opposite side of a table of them. You know, it's a little bit like you're on a TV talk show and you're meant to be arguing with each other because, you know, it's like you're on the left and someone else on the right and you're going to argue about the political argument of the day. So just that graphical construct might be creating a more confrontational element in the conversation than is desired. So we got to thinking about that, and we created this system.
I think my favorite of his is Happy Gilmore.
To try to get around that. I'll just play a bit of it for you.
I'm not sure if I've seen that, but I might have seen it and not realised because all of those films are quite similar, aren't they? So.
Oh, he plays the guy who wants to be a hockey star, but he ends up playing golf. No, it's really funny. You should
is that the one where like his? No, isn't there a football one as well?
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. I heard it wasn't as good.
I'll just turn the volume down and continue this. This is a system called reflection. Basically, these people are in different places.
They were hard times. They
like that with a
one of the things you can play with for hours.
And the system's just extracting them from their background. We have iChat AV, which does this now automatically for you. Back in the days when we were working on this, it was still a pretty cool thing to be able to extract the background. But the thing that this does that iChat AV still doesn't do is mixes you together with the other people in the screen so that your shoulders could be overlapping, or you could sort of scratch the other person on their head or put your finger in their ear. And it just creates a much more intimate kind of space, we find, than the sort of other type of video conferencing system that you often find. So the system could extract you from things like white walls. That was easy. Brick walls were fairly easy as well, but it just
have a look at
moving back there.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, once you extract that back, when you put anything
look at
else
Australia, like you see where Sydney and or Melbourne and the Gold Coast, and that's Perth over here. That's Perth there.
Sort of looking at his reflection.
So I did a trip when I went in March. I went to Singapore, went down to Perth, Alice Springs, Darwin, Cairns,
notice how the
Sydney,
scrunched everybody
Wellington,
down
and then over to Hong Kong, and then back to England again.
And then the last part of this was considered.
That guy's eyes are real scary, aren't they?
I really hope he's wearing makeup.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
But live.
He's actually bald, isn't he? But when they show one scene, a famous scene of him, where he's got his long fingernails out, and he's actually his head's completely bald. So they redo it in the Fast Show. You know the Fast Show, the comedy.
Yeah. Isn't he leaning
might have
over
also
a woman
noticed
or
how
something in that?
And you see his shadow on the wall as well, I think.
Yeah.
We did
That's the name of the new film, Shadow of the
We
Vampire.
wanted the visual attention to be
There's
drawn
sort
to
of
the
a
person who is speaking.
Mozart
We also wanted
or
to maintain
Beethoven
some
kind of
background awareness.
Look at this.
So,
This is pure evil.
you know, the person
Look at
speaking
the eyebrows.
It looks like he's looking at mathematics.
the others
so
kind of
that's not
fade
so
off into the
surprising.
background. And just to sort
That
of
would explain the bags under the eyes, yeah?
Yeah, the bags under the eyes, the crease.
So,
That's a great clock. I want that clock.
it's a very science theater kind of system. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if everybody heard it. He was asking, is the bandwidth available in those rural areas for everybody to have that rural rehabilitation experience? And the answer is yes. In the test group that we were using, I mean, we were using some people who were in fairly distributed areas. But in general, in northern Scotland, the answer is no. They don't have suitable broadband in some very remote locations. It's mainly DSL, and so that's obviously you have to factor in your distance from the exchange in that. And there are some islands that have their own wireless broadband systems that sort of get over that problem. But yes, broadband rollout is a significant factor in this. So, you know, countries or regions that have better broadband access are going to be able to do much more fun and interesting things than others that don't. But just to sort of wrap up the idea on sharing here, so this is just an example of how audio and video analysis, just a little bit of audio and video analysis and extraction can really enhance a communication environment, enhance the conversation that goes on, create a sense of sharing again, a sense of shared space. You know, it's not like I'm in my own window and someone else is in their window, but we can all be sort of inside the same window. And we think that might affect the tenor of the conversation. Did we study that? No. So I wouldn't be able to say if it does it for sure. It's just anecdotal that we think it does. I'm going to show you one more thing that's on the theme of sharing, which is getting...
My name is Julian Moore, and I'm a computer engineer, and I work with a whole bunch of different people to make cool stuff. Well, the project I'm working on at the moment is a thing called Tuna, and it's a little project to share music between people. So if anybody comes within range of you, you can listen to their music and you can exchange messages and that kind of thing and have a kind of shared audio experience. The idea is that as you're listening to music, you're also broadcasting it out so that you become a little kind of tiny radio station yourself.
Got you all the time, I see you in my dreams. Baby boy.
You're in the middle of the Guinness Brewery in Dublin. I know this because I work here on the left in Media Lab Europe. So come on in before I freeze. Media Lab Europe is the sister lab of the MIT Media Lab, which for years now has been a kind of nerd mecca. The idea is that if you take some engineers and some physicists and some mathematicians and some scientists and put them all together in one place, unusual things happen in a really, really cool way. And this pigsty is my desk.
Stop it there. But anyway, the project there was called Tuna, and it was basically, this is kind of a rendition of what it was trying to create. You know, you're all sitting there with your music players, but really what you want to have is, you know, someone being a radio station and everybody sharing with the experience that that person's having individually. So, and the way it worked was, I guess we implemented this back in 2002 or 3 when people were still using iPacs to prototype a lot of these things. So we created a system that worked on Wi-Fi in a sort of ad hoc mode. You could play music just like you would play it on your own iPod, but you could go to a screen where it showed you anyone else who was in range that had the same kind of music player, and you could touch a button and see what was on their playlist and what's currently playing there. And then you could press a button on there, this button, and that would tune in to what they're listening to. So you could listen to exactly what they were listening to synchronized. And it was really important, that synchronization part, because we wanted you to be able to sit on a bus or, you know, stand in line, and when you're tuned in, it's synchronized so that you could be, you know, bobbing your head at the same rate or dancing around, kind of like the silent DJ project out in Amsterdam. And then the last part, the last screen was actually, in a way, the most important part, because once you've connected like that and you're listening to someone else's music, we wanted you to be able to send a message or two back and forth, you know, to just have a little anonymous conversation and, you know, say something like, oh, that band's playing a show next week, did you know that? Oh yeah, do you want to go with me, something or other. And here you've broken the ice maybe with somebody new that you would not have met at all in the sort of alienating urban environment that we all live in. So that was the purpose of this project, was to see if we could create a system that would break the ice, use this music playing idea as a facilitator to break the ice and create new relationships, to create a new sense of sharing or a new level of sharing that wasn't there before. And finally, the sort of final area I'm going to look at is this notion of being healthy. Slow food is generally healthy food, but slow food also allows you to build up a healthy relationship with the people that you're dining with. So maybe slow communication should also be healthy for you and create a healthy relationship between people that you're communicating with. So that's one reason why we got very interested in sports. Sports obviously keeps you healthy because of the physical activity, but it also allows you to get to know people better and build trust with them. Often if you move to a new town or you start a new job, you might play a game of squash, or you might go out and play a game of basketball with someone you just are trying to get to know. And it's a way of breaking the ice with them, of sort of building some sense of trust so that you can go back into work and work better with them after that. So the problem with sports is that you have to be in the same physical location to actually play them. And so that seems to be a quite big drawback. So why don't we be able to take advantage of all of these good effects of sports, but over a distance? That's the idea. We created one system that was actually like a soccer over distance one. Then we made this one that was called jogging over a distance, in which you could be jogging in one place in the world and your friend in another place in the world, And the system would sort of connect you on a mobile phone connection. But it would also be tracking your heart rate, so that if you were not exerting yourself as much as the other person, then the other person would hear your voice starting to fade kind of into the background. So you had to kind of keep running at the same speed or at the same exertion level in order to keep the connection going. But our latest one is basically boxing over a distance. And I'll show you a video of what that's like, and I'll describe to you what it is as we go here.
Keep ball, Miles. Keep ball.
So it's, and you get these kind of Batman-esque pows and misses that come up, and he can literally throw his entire body in that if he wants to. Here's another video. This guy was butts and everything. So we think that's way cooler than this. I mean, in the Nintendo Wii is really something you just kind of hold the Wiimote and you're waving it around in midair. There's no real exertion there except the exertion that you need to move your own hand or your own arm or something like that. So, with this boxing system that we created, this is kind of a graphic that describes how it is, like a boxing ring sliced in half, and you have the two halves in two different places in the world. You're capturing a silhouette from behind the person and projecting that on the alternative site so that the other person has a target to actually hit. Now, the one thing we didn't implement was something that actually comes back and hits you. And that was going to be version 2, and we had a lot of ideas about how we were going to do that, like maybe something coming off from the top and hitting you on the head or something like that, or maybe electroshock, although I really hate electroshock. I think it's very uncomfortable. But anyway, there's enough physical engagement in the system that you probably don't even need something coming back and hitting you at this point. You play for 30 seconds and you get very tired as it is. And you're also able to speak to the other person. I should have mentioned that before. There's an audio connection so that after the game is finished, you can say, "Good game, you want to go again," or something like that, or "You're an idiot," or whatever you want to say. So I think what this is suggesting, again, is that communication doesn't have to be a sedentary experience. If you think about it, practically all communication that we know of or that we use now involves sitting down or not moving around too much at all. And it doesn't have to be like that. Communication can involve physical exertion. It can help keep us healthy as a result. And just like in sports, it might be able to help build trust between people over a distance in a new way. So there's a few pictures there showing some other aspects of it. We've shown that in a couple of different places, and we're actually working right now on commercializing this system together with a company in the States. And I can't say much more about it than that right now. So just to, sorry? Yeah. Well, we were interested in that. We were interested in sort of installing it. Like, let's say you have your Google or Microsoft or your sort of big multinational company with multiple locations in the world, and you just have that installed somewhere in the building, so that when you're tired of coding or tired of sitting in a normal video conference, you can go outside and just have it out with someone. Yeah. Well, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can just go work out and you could do it with someone else, and in fact you could almost maybe replace the video conference with that, because it's kind of more fun to play a game and talk while you're playing. Yes, please. Yes. Yeah, that's a nice idea. And another idea that we had, which we haven't implemented yet, maybe one of you wants to do it, is that you could have almost like a full body suit that you wear when you play this, that has something like vibrating motors or something in it, in different parts of it, so that when you're hit in a particular part of your body, then you could sort of feel a sensation at that part of your body. It doesn't have to hurt you necessarily. You just need to feel some feedback about where you're being hit. So. It was no, it wasn't deliberate. Actually, it was just that we couldn't obviously project an image of the person because we were capturing their silhouette from behind them. There's no camera that's in front. There's no way to put a camera kind of in the mattress to capture the person in a nice way. So we were just capturing the silhouette. But what we did want to do at one point was put a sort of two side screens so that you could look to the side and you could sort of see your opponent there in a mirror image. By looking to either side of the mattress. So there could be ways that you could enhance it like that, enhance the connection. But then what a lot of people were asking for in our tests that we did was some kind of after experience. Like you play the game and you can talk to them, talk to your opponent while you're playing the game. But then a lot of them wanted to sort of be able to talk to them after that, like almost have like a drink over distance afterwards. And so that actually has got us onto a new project theme now, which is drinking over a distance, which I don't have anything to show you on. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up my talk, and we can ask more questions if you want, because I'd be happy to answer more stuff. But this is just a recap of the sort of areas of slow communication that I was talking about. So I hope that I've convinced you that there's maybe a trend going on here, that there's going to be more of this kind of gourmet communication design happening in the future, and that this is a worthwhile area to be working in. And I hope I've also convinced you of the importance of design at all in these things, because I think there are mainly engineers in the audience here. And in my experience, engineers don't care too much about design. They're sort of more interested in just getting the bits from one place to another, or displaying the audio or the video. And there's just so many different ways to actually display that audio and video. I mean, in a way, the sending of the bits is the stuff that we know about. We know how to do that. What we don't know how to do is how to offer those bits in a way that's useful and meaningful to the people that are supposed to be using the system. So that's the role of design in this. Now, there's an alternative problem, which is designers often don't really respect engineers and kind of consider engineers to be the low life and don't really want to ever get into that. So there's been a kind of disconnect between engineering and design for a long time, and if you can, at this early stage in your careers, be developing a sensitivity for design, I think you're going to be much better off. Companies that are looking for people who can sort of stand in both domains and really hold their own. So I hope that's useful in some way. But that's my contact information there if you want to find out more about these projects. Many of the projects I was describing are happening at Distance Lab, and other ones were happening in Media Lab Europe, which is the group that I was running before this. But I'll leave this up, and you can ask more questions if you like. Yeah. That's excellent, actually. Yeah, I like that. I did not consider that. No. Yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we have. And that project was really done back in 2002 or 3, I think it was. And we didn't, I think to be honest, we just haven't gotten around to it. But there were certain legal issues as well about, being a radio transmitter and transmitting your music, and there need to be some consideration of that. But I think, and we actually filed a patent application as well on a couple aspects of it that's still pending. So, but I would really like to see that kind of an application. Personally, I would be very interested in using that kind of thing. And it would be easy to implement on an iPhone or one of the other platforms nowadays. It might not be entirely legal, but it would be really, really fun, I think. So. Yeah. But I don't think it was able to synchronize the music. And I think that was a really important part of what I showed you, was this shared sort of synchronized experience. I don't think anyone's touched on that one yet. Yes. I think that's a really deep question. I don't know if everybody heard that or not, but do you want to make a response to it, or? Yeah, I mean, I think certainly in my own work, I mean, practically everything that I've worked on has all been about breaking outside of the screen and getting things into the real world somehow. For example, that music sharing application is something that, you know, it could have been done in iTunes or, you know, on your laptop or something like that, but enabling that kind of a social networking application in the real world was really what that's all about. And we've done some other stuff which is about taking social networking information off of Facebook and, you know, onto our bodies in some way so that we can use it when we're in everyday situations. Like we had this thing that was like a wristband that you would wear, and it would detect when you're shaking hands with somebody, and it would try to transmit information between your two wristbands. And if it noticed that you had friends in common, it would tell you what friends you had in common so that you would have something there to sort of break the ice in your conversation. So it's like using the stuff that's in cyberspace in the real world, you know, like breaking outside of the screen. So I think definitely in my experience, it's all about breaking out of the box and out of the screen and trying to get this stuff into real life. Yeah. Go ahead, yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I could have expressed it better than you just did right now. But yes, I think that in a lot of the things that I've shown, there was something that was basically the mediator or the facilitator of some kind of trust building or sharing interaction. For example, in the music one, it's music that's facilitating this shared experience and creating, you know, breaking the ice between people. In the sports one, it's a particular sports game that's, you know, it's a ritual that has rules and strategy, and you can play that at the same time that you're interacting and, you know, getting to know somebody. So it's almost like a ritual there that that's being provided for people to share, and by sharing a sort of sport or sharing a music moment or sharing, you know, like couples go to the movies and they share a scary movie, and by doing that and by raising their arousal because they were scared, you know, that's something that bonds them closer together in the future. I think it's the same sort of thing. Yeah?
The Japanese one, the caress, is incredibly sexy. But going back to, there is an accepted in American culture, dancing. You do this dancing with someone at distance, and you absolutely fantastic.
Okay.
You do waltz,
ballroom
swing,
dancing,
Asian, whatever.
The lambada or something.
Yeah, whatever one wants, you know.
Yeah.
Salsa, swing.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Facebook handshake application reminded me of an application for iPhones called Bump, where like
yes.
Facebook have it. Are there any features of kind of, or now we're seeing more use of accelerometers and other types of spatial technologies built into the devices themselves. Have those triggered any new ideas or kind of ways of maybe doing something like your distance lab experiments with more of a mass market device that may be now, because it has an accelerometer, could be more, I guess, slow?
Well, I think I don't know. That's a big question. I would imagine that more and more stuff that you find on the iPhone, from accelerometer to now things like your digital compass and your GPS, these are all enabling technologies that are going to allow applications like this to happen more and more. So I don't know if I can answer it any better than that, but I definitely think that the more platforms that we have with the more enabling technologies, sensing, and display that they can do, the more stuff like this is just going to be possible, and you're going to hopefully find a flurry of these sorts of things being developed by other groups. So, yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's not the best answer in the world, but.
It seems right up your alley. There's like a vibrate function in there. Like if I had some type of jogging application, somebody beat me to the punch, it would vibrate and say you lose or something like that.
Sure, yeah. Or you could have 100 different iPhones that are all in your strapped into your body, and you bring the appropriate one at the right time.
Yeah, there's your boxing suit.
We probably have enough iPhones in the room. We could try that. Question? Yeah. Sorry? Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of these projects are like very novel and new ways of interacting, and I imagine that you won't really know what people will make of them before you create them. I'm just wondering how you sort of evaluate their experience and what kind of conclusions you can draw and how.
Yeah, that's a great question. To be quite honest with you, we haven't done really robust evaluations on all of these. Some of them, we just make them as experiments, and we sort of put them out there as ideas, or we test them, very kind of in a lightweight way with people that are around us. And it's more about challenging people's assumptions, like making a video about it and challenging the way people do it. But we have done studies on a lot of these things. For example, the sports one, well, especially the early one that I just touched on, we did a soccer over distance game. And in that one, we did a very complex study, I guess you could say, where we got random people who hadn't met before to come in and play this soccer over distance game between each other, and without actually meeting in person before. And so they would exert themselves for half an hour, play this game, and then after that they would be interviewed together. They would fill out a questionnaire, and they were videoed, and then we were asking independent people to evaluate those videos to see if there was some kind of bonding that was created between them, if they could notice that or not. And we compared that group against a control group that came in and played a very similar sort of the game, except that there was no physical exertion. So we wanted to find out what did the exertion really add to the experience. And what we found is that the exertion form of the game, the people who played the exertion form of the game, felt like they made better friends with the other person. They felt like the other person was more talkative. They were less concerned about the audio and video quality, and there were some other results like that. So, but there were also holes that you could poke in that study because, novelty effect and those sorts of things. So we got into studying these things, but really it's difficult in some cases, especially with students who are doing a project and they have to graduate within 2 years, and it's difficult to do anything that's longer than a 2 or 3 year study, something like that. So there are challenges, there are real challenges to that kind of thing. Same with the music one. We did a sort of a study comparing, or just looking at how people used that. That was much more of an ethnographic thing, just noticing how people used it. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's very important to do that just so you can understand, is this exertion thing really doing anything? Is it something we should put into other sorts of communication devices? And, you're not going to find out unless you do a good study. Any other questions from the back section? Are we out of time? Almost? All right. Well, anyway, thanks very much.